Video game company Unity closes offices following death threat. Yep, this just happened today. It's Thursday, September 14th, 2023. That's big news on the internet right now. This death threat today, but also the news that led up to it. Let's talk about that. If you are wondering, I'm sure you've seen, I don't know, maybe you've seen some of the news. Unity is a game developing engine. So game developers use Unity to build their video games. There's also the Unreal Engine, and then there's the very popular open source one called Godot. So imagine that you buy a video game and you pay whatever price for it, whether it be a phone game, maybe on your tablet or on one of your computers, pay $5, $10, $20, $60, depending on the video game. And every time you download that video game, you have to pay a little bit extra. Would you do that? I mean, if you wanted to play the game and that was the only way, of course you'd have to, but would you be happy about that? Well, that would start to increase the price of games. This is what Unity is doing to game developers. They want to charge a per install fee. So every time you install the game, this is my understanding, every time they install, a player installs a game that they've purchased, they want to charge a fee. I've installed Valheim many times. I've installed it on my laptop, on my desktop. I've had to reinstall it once or twice, and I got a new hard drive recently, so I installed it again. Can you imagine that I'd have to pay a fee to download that and install it every single time? Or that the developer has to pay a fee because me as a player reinstalls their game? That's ridiculous. The developer has no control over how many times a player installs the game that they paid for. I mean, if anybody should be getting money here for installs, for downloading a game and installing it, it should be Steam or Epic or wherever you get your video games from, right? They're providing a service letting you download the game every single time after you purchase it. Now, I don't know any platforms that do charge per download or per install, but if they were going to, at least that would make sense to me. Like I could understand that because I downloaded it once when I first purchased it, and I need to download it again. Well, that service has to still be available for me to download the game, to get the game. They provided that service to me on the initial purchase. But if, down the road somewhere I need to download the game again, they have to keep that infrastructure going, even though they're not making any more money off of my purchase of that game. But if they did start charge, at least I could understand that. But to charge developers for every time we as players install the game, how does that make sense in any world? I mean, this is my understanding of what's going on. And, these death threats are, I don't condone violence or threats, but the game developers, this is how they make their living. And when you think about it, like you could really interfere with people's living, with them sending their kids to college, with keeping a roof over their head, with feeding their families. This is a terrible move. It doesn't even make sense to install to charge a developer every time the player installs the game. I mean, who thought that was going to be a good idea in any world? There's a rumor that I heard that the CEO of Unity was also, I think it was with EA, if I remember correctly, and he was talking about one of them shooter games and was heard saying, this is just what I heard, so I don't know if this is true, but that he had mentioned, wouldn't it be nice to charge people every time they reload their weapon in the game, like $1? I mean, if you love the game that much and you want to support the development, the company that's making the game, then I guess you would pay it. But that seems like a little bit of a crazy pricing model. I don't know how many clients, customers they would continue to have if that were their pricing model. So many of our favorite games, Valheim especially, are built on Unity. How will this affect them? I've read already that so many developers, you can go to Twitter or YouTube, or there's articles all over the internet where developers are saying, that's it, I'm done with Unity. I'm developing the rest of my games from here on out, in Unreal or on Godot, the open source one. That's great that it's open source. I would imagine it doesn't have the same kind of support, but it's a thriving community. Lots of great games have been built on it, but it's open source, so you own it. You can charge whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with your game. You don't have to be, tethered to a company's bad decisions like Unity seems to have done here. So I want to show you a tweet here. So here's a tweet from Richard Svensson, and he is the creator of Valheim, if you are unaware. Well, he retweeted a post from a gentleman named Tim Soray, and it says, Unity is attempting to make developers pay for each new game install by a customer. This is the most impractical, most unhinged business decision I've ever seen. John Riccitello should resign. I believe that's the CEO of Unity. And so our Richard Svensson retweeted this. And this seems to be the opinion of a lot of game developers, that they are really unhappy with this. Of course, leading to, this unfortunate situation. Hopefully no one gets hurt from this. That would be terrible. So they were saying, they were trying to clarify, if the information I read, if I understand it correctly, they were trying to say that, so if a game, makes 200,000 in revenue and 200,000 downloads, then this new model applies to them, where they have to pay every time we, as the players, install the game. If there's 200,000 downloads, and I think it was 20 cents they had to pay per download, that's an extra $40,000 of their $200,000 that they have to pay. Steam, I think Steam does 30%. Maybe that varies, but that's what I heard. And that makes sense, right? It's a distribution platform that, they have to make their money too. So then if you have a publishing company, they're taking a percentage, and you have all your employees and or your overhead costs. There's a lot that goes into it. And so if a game happens to sneak above that, $200,000, boom, suddenly there's a $40,000 fee for the installs, on top of whatever other, pricing plan that Unity has for using their engine. And what if people reinstall it? That just goes up. There were some people, some of the articles I read were saying that, well, what if somebody just wants to start a campaign to cripple a development company by reinstalling the game just over and over and over and over? Like, set up a macro on your computer and just download it, install it, uninstall it, and then just repeat that process hundreds or thousands of times, and then get a whole community of people to do that. They're on the hook for that 20 cents every install. If this is what that they're planning to do, that's just crazy. Okay, so there's this other tweet here where this Tim Soray says, just go for a straightforward revenue share and forget this amateurish and unreliable scheme. We can verify sales. We can't verify installs. Games are pirated all the time. So what do they do when somebody pirates the game and installs it? The developer on the hook for that 20 cents for somebody who pirated it also? It seems like this is such a terrible, terrible idea. Developers make money when people purchase the game. That's when Unity should make their money, on every purchase of the game. Easy, simple, not stupid. Oh my goodness. The older I get, the more and more I realize that people, no matter what their income level is, and no matter what their education level is, there's just a huge amount of stupidity and people being bad at their jobs. Okay. And of course, Richard Svensson's, that's what he said. So he's agreeing with that, right? Then there's articles going around too, talking about Unity Software's new game developer fees result in PR disaster, stocks fall. So apparently Unity is having a hard time being profitable anyways, from what I read, if that's true. And here is, in the last 5 days, their stock prices. So I think this is right when the announcement was made, and boom, it dropped a little bit, and it's just kind of hovering, maybe even going down a little bit more here. Like I said, developers are talking about jumping ship. Some developers are saying that if this pricing plan actually goes live on, I think it's January 1st, 2024, that they'll they'll move their game to another platform. They don't want to be tied to Unity's, to the whims of Unity, who can just change their minds at any time. That's what they did today, and whatever they end up doing in January 1st, 2024. But what do they do a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? I mean, they could just find other ways to, make really bad decisions that will mess with the financial models that the developers have in place, trying to develop games and make money and pay their bills with. But here is, I pulled up just the last year of Unity's stock prices. You can see it looks like at least in the last year, it's as high as it's ever been back in July. It dropped in August, came back up in September, and is now falling again. And you can see this is just up and down, up and down. It's all over the place. This is a stock I would be terrified to invest in. I actually don't invest in individual stocks. I do index funds and other things, but I'm not here to give any kind of financial advice. I don't want to get into that. But wow. This is how you're going to try to generate more revenue for your company that's struggling to be profitable, is charging per install. How does that make any sense? Like, I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone when I just hear that. When I just hear that, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone so many times. Like when movies come out and people love it, I'm like, why? Or a TV show that they love, and I think it's bad, and I'm like, why do you love that? Or certain video games, that have fields and fields of stars in space that people love, and I'm just like, why? There's so many things wrong with it. But I feel like I'm in a Twilight Zone sometimes when I see the way that things unfold in the world. And here you go. Here's another example. It seems like Unity is starting to walk back some of the things that they did post. So if I scroll down here, they say how we define and count installs. So this is a recent post they put out after the gaming development world went crazy, angry over their announcement. Assuming the install and revenue thresholds are met, we will only count net new installs on any device starting January 1st, 2024. Additionally, developers are not responsible for paying a runtime fee on reinstall charges. We are not going to charge a fee for reinstalls. And I believe somebody was asking on one of their forums or somewhere, and they replied and said, yes, the developers are responsible for reinstalls, and now they're walking this back, right? So they say one thing, and now people are outraged, so they're walking it back. Fraudulent install charges. We are not going to charge a fee for fraudulent installs. We will work directly with you on cases where fraud or botnets are suspected of malicious intent, trials, partial play demos, and automation installs. We're not going to count these towards your install count. Early access games are not considered demos. Web and streaming games, we are not going to count web and streaming games towards your install count either. And then charity related installs, the pricing change in install count will not be applied to your charity bundles initiative. So some of those things, they actually said exactly the opposite from what I read. And now they're walking it back. They say now on new installs on any device, new installs on any device. We will only count net new installs on any device. I mean, this is still weird and unclear. I just replaced my hard drive. Is it a new device? What if I bought a whole new computer or installed on my laptop? Is that a new device? Does the developer have to pay because I install on a new device? Twilight Zone, the world we live in. So hopefully whatever ends up happening here, it doesn't hurt Iron Gate and Valheim. Like, really, that's what our huge concern is, right? Like, that's one of my huge concerns. They have been lucky enough to really, see some big success for their game, I think more than they had anticipated. But with this pricing model, they definitely meet all the thresholds to then have to start paying on January 1st for installations of the game. I mean, it's so weird. So again, Godot, the other development platform, is open source. A lot of developers already use it. A lot are thinking about moving away from Unity. And then Unreal is also a huge one, of course. And I believe they charge a 5% commission. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on with the world. How did anybody think that this was a good idea? Hopefully we don't see Valheim hurt too much. And I would pay for another copy. Or find some, I'd love to find some, Valheim has a merch store, so that's another way you can support them. If they have to move to another engine, that's going to slow down content for us immensely. I mean, if Richard Svensson gets frustrated enough with Unity and says, nope, we're gonna port over to another platform. Wow. What does it mean to have to stop and your whole development team now has to learn Unreal or, port everything over to Unreal or Godot or something else? That effort and time and money could be to make us some content, to make us more content, to finish the biomes, to continue to add, great settings like they added the world settings and world modifiers and all these different things. This is not what I wanted to hear, waiting for the Ashlands to come up here maybe this year, hopefully in December. But then in January, who knows what's going to happen. Anyways, that's what's going on in the gaming world. And hopefully it doesn't hit Valheim too hard. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And just remember, if you need a G Portal server, save 10% with my link. Go to grimfrost.viking.com/grimfrost. You want to buy some Viking gear. New computer, directtoviking.com/Zydax. It's what I use. I love it. Thanks to all my patrons, YouTube supporters, and everybody out there. Until next time, have fun out there.